Alright guys, in this video I wanted to quickly go over zones. What makes a zones? When can we have a box for a zone instead of an exact price level, and all those confusions that you guys might have had. Alright, so here I have the monthly chart for SPY, and let's start drawing out some zones. So initially, what are zones? Zones are areas of price which have acted as both support and resistance. That's the area where price has some sensitivity where it will react to that area. So if we look at this chart, what do we first see? We see that this area has held price below it for a while. You can say that's a resistance. It also held price above it for a while. Now, since it's not an exact price level, it's a range. How can you say? Because this is what we have. Something along these lines. Some monthly candles reach the top of the range, some don't. Some stay below, right? The bodies of the candle for the most part stay below this area. Here, for the most part, bodies of the candles stayed above this higher range of the box. So sometimes we would have wicks that reach below. The reason we give this area importance is because this is the monthly chart, while there are events on the daily levels that might lead to us creating a wick. For example, this wick right here could be because of one CPI event that happened in August and that led to this, but price finally closed below this area. So if you're trading on the daily charts and you're drawing zones on the monthly chart, you want to realize that this area, we could wick through it, or we can wick somewhere in it and still not change the idea that we have for the monthly levels. And that's why I drew it as an area instead of one specific price level, because it allows us for the fluctuations or the noise that might happen on the smaller time frames when looking at the monthly time frame chart. So let's draw out another one. Another level you can see is here. That's where price has been limited to on the downside. So I'm going to draw it out and I will explain why this one is also a range and not just a specific level. So I drew it out something like this. The reason is, first of all, alright, let me show how this area acted as support. You can see all the way from July to April of 2022, price stayed above this, and since then this area has kept price below it. That's why it's a zone. It acted as a support and a resistance. This area, the reason I drew it, you can see this acted as a resistance in 2020 before we had this massive rally, and now it has acted as a support for almost 10 months, keeping price above. Why did I draw it as a range again? You can see this, the lower level kept these candles for 3 months below it, right? We might have a wick here and there, but the bodies of the candles stayed below it, and on this side we might have a wick, or in this case, or sometimes the bodies came, but it kept price above it. So you can see it's not a specific price level, at least on the monthly chart. It is a range that's keeping price above or below it. And as we get on a smaller time frame like the daily or the weekly, we might be able to see some granularity in it. We might be able to see a daily zone here, but on the monthly, we don't draw it as a specific price level, but as a range. So let's look at smaller time frames. Now on the smaller time frames, we already know this is a monthly zone, right? This area, we might see some form of noise on the smaller time frame in it, but overall, as long as we're below this area, price is likely to go lower. As long as we are above this area, like 350, price can be supported here and go higher. Now, if you're in the weekly zone, what should we look for? We should look for an area which might be keeping price, defining price action, and that looks to be this, around 390. So now, this one, depending on how much granularity you want or how much certainty you want, you can either draw it as a range or a specific level. Let me make it thicker, blue. So you can see on the weekly charts, this level has consistently kept price either above it or below it. Acted as support here, acted as resistance here. When price came back, acted as support again for a bounce. When price came back, acted as resistance again for a bounce. Same. So this line is a weekly level. Now, is it exactly 390.10 price level? No, it can be a small range around it. Like you can see these wicks here where price might wick there and come back in. So what you can do is pay attention to the bodies of the candles rather than the wicks, or you can draw it as a small range like we did on the monthly chart. It depends on how you want to perceive it. But you have to recognize that a zone is not a specific price point. It's an area around an important price level. Same thing for the daily charts. You can come back and then draw the zones based on the concepts I just described on the monthly and weekly. But I hope you're starting to see why sometimes it's better to draw the zone as a range rather than a specific price point, while at other times you can simply draw it as a price point, and that should provide enough clarity for your purposes.